Battle of Gaugamela. Major battle of the Wars of Alexander the Great, 331 BC. The Battle of Gaugamela. The Camel's House, also called the Battle of Arbela, Rho Beta Eta Lambda Alpha, Arbela, took place in 331 BC between the forces of the Army of Macedon under Alexander the Great and the Persian Army under King Darius III. It was the second and final battle between the two kings, and is considered to be the final blow to the Achaemenid Empire, resulting in its complete conquest by Alexander. The fighting took place in Gaugamela, a village on the banks of the river Bumidus, north of Arbela, modern-day Erbil, in Iraqi Kurdistan. Despite being heavily outnumbered, the Army of Macedon emerged victorious due to the employment of superior tactics and the clever usage of light infantry forces. It was a decisive victory for the League of Corinth, and it led to the fall of the Achaemenid Empire and of Darius III. Background. In November 333 BC, King Darius III had lost the Battle of Issus to Alexander the Great, which resulted in the subsequent capture of his wife, his mother and his two daughters, Statira II and Drapetus. Alexander's victory at Issus had also given him complete control of southern Asia Minor, modern-day Turkey. After the battle, King Darius retreated to Babylon where he regrouped with his remaining army that was there, on site from a previous battle. Alexander fought at the Siege of Tyre, 332 BC, which lasted from January to July, and the victory resulted in his control of the Levant. Alexander then again fought at the Siege of Gaza. Persian troop counts in Egypt were diminished due to many soldiers being removed to support the Battle of Issus and dying there. As a result, the Persian satrap of Egypt, Mazax, peacefully surrendered to Alexander upon his arrival. Negotiations between Darius and Alexander. Darius tried to dissuade Alexander from further attacks on his empire by diplomacy. Nowatka writes that, conflicting reports of ancient authors make the reconstruction of peace negotiations hypothetical. Ancient historians provide different accounts of his negotiations with Alexander, which can be separated into three negotiation attempts. Darius reportedly initially requested peace and the safe return of his family, beginning with an offer to pay 10,000 talents as ransom, then offering to cede land in Asia Minor west of the Halys River, and eventually offering to recognize Alexander as a co-equal status as monarch. Alexander rejected all of these offers. Historians Justin, Arrian and Curtius Rufus, writing in the 1st and 2nd centuries, say that Darius had sent a letter to Alexander after the Battle of Issus. The letter demanded that Alexander withdraw from Asia as well as release all of his prisoners. According to Curtius and Justin, Darius offered a ransom for his prisoners, although Arrian does not mention a ransom. Curtius describes the tone of the letter as offensive, and Alexander refused his demands. A second negotiation attempt took place after the capture of Tyre. Darius offered Alexander marriage with his daughter Statira II, as well as all the territory west of the Halys River. Justin is less specific, and does not mention a specific daughter, and only speaks of a portion of Darius' kingdom. Diodorus Siculus, 1st century Greek historian, likewise mentions the offer of all territory west of the Halys River, a treaty of friendship and a large ransom for Darius' captives. Diodorus is the only ancient historian who mentions the fact that Alexander concealed this letter and presented his friends with a forged one that was favorable to his own interests. Again, Alexander refused Darius' offers. King Darius started to prepare for another battle with Alexander after the failure of the second negotiation attempt. Nevertheless, Darius made a third and final effort to negotiate with Alexander the Great after Alexander had departed from Egypt. Darius' third offer was much more generous. He praised Alexander for the treatment of his mother Sisygambes, offered him all territory west of the Euphrates, co-rulership of the Achaemenid Empire, the hand of one of his daughters and 30,000 talents of silver. In the account of Diodorus, Alexander explicitly deliberated this offer with his friends. Parmenion was the only one who spoke up, saying, "If I were Alexander, should accept what was offered and make a treaty." Alexander reportedly replied, "So should I, if I were Parmenion." Alexander, in the end, refused the offer of Darius, and insisted that there could be only one king of Asia. He called on Darius to surrender to him or to meet him in battle in order to decide who would be the sole king of Asia. The descriptions given by other historians of the third negotiation attempt are similar to the account of Diodorus, but differ in details. Diodorus, Curtius and Arrian write that an embassy was sent instead of a letter, which is also claimed by Justin and Plutarch, 1st century. Plutarch and Arrian mention the ransom offered for the prisoners was 10,000 talents, but Diodorus, Curtius and Justin had given the figure of 30,000. Arrian writes that Darius' third attempt took place during the siege of Tyre, but the other historians placed the second negotiation attempt at that time. In spite of everything, with the failure of his negotiation attempts, Darius had now decided to prepare for another battle with Alexander. Ancient sources. A decorative Neo-Attic relief of the Battle of Gaugamela, with allegories of Europe and Asia standing on the side, 2nd century BC 2nd century AD. Rome, Palazzo Chigi. 19th century reproduction by engraving. According to Arrian, Darius' force numbered 40,000 cavalry and 1 million infantry. Diodorus Siculus put it at 200,000 cavalry and 800,000 infantry. Plutarch put it at 1 million troops, without a breakdown in composition, while according to Curtius Rufus it consisted of 45,000 cavalry and 200,000 infantry. Furthermore, according to Arrian, Diodorus and Curtius, Darius had 200 chariots while Arrian mentions 15 war elephants. Included in Darius's infantry were about 2,000 Greek mercenary hoplites. According to Arrian, Indian troops were also deployed. He explains that Darius III obtained the help of those Indians who bordered on the Bactrians, together with the Bactrians and Sogdianians themselves, all under the command of Bessus, the satrap of Bactria. The Indians in question were probably from the area of Gandhara. Indian hill men are also said by Arrian to have joined the Aracocians under satrap Barcendes, and are thought to have been either the Satagidians or the Hindush. While Darius had a significant advantage in numbers, most of his troops were of a lower quality than Alexander's. Alexander's pesateroi were armed with a 6-meter pike, the sarissa. The main Persian infantry was poorly trained and equipped in comparison to Alexander's pesateroi and hoplites. The only respectable infantry Darius had were his 2,000 Greek hoplites and his personal bodyguard, the 10,000 immortals. The Greek mercenaries fought in a phalanx, armed not with a heavy shield but with spears no longer than 3 meters, while the spears of the immortals were 2 meters long. Among the other Persian troops, the most heavily armed were the Armenians, who were armed the Greek way and probably fought as a phalanx. Size of Macedonian army. Alexander commanded Greek forces from his kingdom of Macedon and the Hellenic League, along with Greek mercenaries and levies from the Paeonian and Thracian tributary peoples. According to Arrian, his forces numbered 7,000 cavalry and 40,000 infantry. Most historians agree that the Macedonian army consisted of 31,000 heavy infantry, including mercenaries and hoplites from other allied Greek states in reserve, with an additional 9,000 light infantry consisting mainly of peltasts with some archers. The size of the Greek mounted army was about 7,000.